Begin transmission. This is a message from the anonymous charity also known as The Collective. Today's broadcast date is January 20th, 2019. This is part 1 of a series on the ECHELON network. We touched very briefly on this when we told you about the GCHQ and CIACO joint operation with the UK's JTRIG program. In the greatest surveillance effort ever established, the US National Security Agency, NSA, has created a global spy system, codename ECHELON, which captures and analyzes virtually every phone call, fax, email and telex message sent anywhere in the world. ECHELON is controlled by the NSA and is operated in conjunction with the Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, of England, the Communications Security Establishment, CSE, of Canada, the Australian Defence Security Directorate, DSD, the General Communications Security Bureau, GCSB, of New Zealand. These organizations are bound together under a secret 1948 agreement, UGUSA, whose terms and text remain under wraps even today. The ECHELON system is fairly simple in design: position intercept stations all over the world to capture all satellite, microwave, cellular and fiber optic communications traffic, and then process this information through the massive computer capabilities of the NSA, including advanced voice recognition and optical character recognition, OCR, programs, and look for code words or phrases, known as the ECHELON dictionary, that will prompt the computers to flag the message for recording and transcribing for future analysis. Intelligence analysts at each of the respective listening stations maintain separate keyword lists for them to analyze any conversation or document flagged by the system, which is then forwarded to the respective intelligence agency headquarters that requested the intercept. But apart from directing their ears towards terrorists and rogue states, ECHELON is also being used for purposes well outside its original mission. The regular discovery of domestic surveillance targeted at American civilians for reasons of unpopular political affiliation or for no probable cause at all in violation of the First, Fourth and Fifth Amendments of the Constitution, are consistently impeded by very elaborate and complex legal arguments and privilege claims by the intelligence agencies and the US government. The guardians and caretakers of our liberties, our duly elected political representatives, give scarce attention to these activities, let alone the abuses that occur under their watch. Among the activities that the ECHELON targets are political spying. Since the close of World War II, the U.S. intelligence agencies have developed a consistent record of trampling the rights and liberties of the American people. Even after the investigations into the domestic and political surveillance activities of the agencies that followed in the wake of the Watergate fiasco, the NSA continues to target the political activity of unpopular political groups and our duly elected representatives. One whistleblower charged in a 1988 Cleveland Plain Dealer interview that, while she was stationed at the Menwith Hill facility in the 1980s, she heard real-time intercepts of South Carolina Senator Strom Thurmond. A former Maryland congressman, Michael Barnes, claimed in a 1995 Baltimore Sun article that under the Reagan administration his phone calls were regularly intercepted, which he discovered only after reporters had been passed transcripts of his conversations by the White House. One of the most shocking revelations came to light after several GCHQ officials became concerned about the targeting of peaceful political groups, and told the London Observer in 1992 that the ECHELON dictionaries targeted Amnesty International, Greenpeace, and even Christian ministries. Commercial espionage. Since the demise of communism in Eastern Europe, the intelligence agencies have searched for a new justification for their surveillance capability in order to protect their prominence and their bloated budgets. Their solution was to redefine the notion of national security to include economic, commercial and corporate concerns. An office was created within the Department of Commerce, the Office of Intelligence Liaison, to forward intercepted materials to major U.S. corporations. In many cases, the beneficiaries of this commercial espionage effort are the very companies that helped the NSA develop the systems that power the ECHELON network. This incestuous relationship is so strong that sometimes this intelligence information is used to push other American manufacturers out of deals in favor of these mammoth U.S. defense and intelligence contractors, who frequently are the source of major cash contributions to both political parties. While signals intelligence technology was helpful in containing and eventually defeating the Soviet Empire during the Cold War, what was once designed to target a select list of communist countries and terrorist states is now indiscriminately directed against virtually every citizen in the world. The European Parliament is now asking whether the ECHELON communications interceptions violate the sovereignty and privacy of citizens in other countries. In some cases, such as the NSA's Menwith Hill station in England, surveillance is conducted against citizens on their own soil and with the full knowledge and cooperation of their government. This report suggests that Congress pick up its long-neglected role as watchdog of the constitutional rights and liberties of the American people, instead of its current role as lapdog to the U.S. intelligence agencies. Congressional hearings ought to be held, similar to the Church and Rockefeller Committee hearings held in the mid-1970s, to find out to what extent the ECHELON system targets the personal, political, religious, and commercial communications of American citizens. The late Senator Frank Church warned that the technology and capability embodied in the ECHELON system represented a direct threat to the liberties of the American people. Left unchecked, ECHELON could be used by either the political elite or the intelligence agencies themselves as a tool to subvert the civil protections of Constitution and to destroy representative government in the United States. Introduction. The culmination of the Cold War conflict brought home hard realities for many military and intelligence agencies who were dependent upon the confrontation for massive budgets and little civilian oversight. World War II allied political and military alliances had quickly become intelligence alliances in the shadow of the Iron Curtain that descended upon Eastern Europe after the war. But for some intelligence agencies, the end of the Cold War just meant a shift in mission and focus, not a loss of manpower or financial resources. One such U.S. governmental organization is the National Security Agency, NSA. Despite the disintegration of communism in the former Soviet Union and throughout Eastern Europe, the secretive NSA continues to grow at an exponential rate in terms of budget, manpower and spying abilities. Other countries have noticed the rapid growth of NSA resources and facilities around the world, and have decried the extensive spying upon their citizens by the US. A preliminary report released by the European Parliament in January 1998 detailed research conducted by independent researchers that uncovered a massive US spy technology network that routinely monitors telephone, fax and email information on citizens all over the world, but particularly in the European Union, EU, and Japan. Titled An Appraisal of Technologies of Political Control, this report, issued by the Scientific and Technological Options Assessment, STOA, Committee of the European Parliament, caused a tremendous stir in the establishment press in Europe. At least one major US media outlet, the New York Times, covered the issuance of the report as well. The STOA report also exposed a festering sore spot between the US and our EU allies. The widespread surveillance of citizens in EU countries by the NSA has been known and discussed by European journalists since 1981. The name of the system in question is ECHELON, and it is one of the most secretive spy systems in existence. ECHELON is actually a vast network of electronic spy stations located around the world and maintained by 5 countries, the US, England, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. These countries, bound together in a still secret, as of 2019, agreement called EUCUSA, spy on each other's citizens by intercepting and gathering electronic signals of almost every telephone call, fax transmission and email message transmitted around the world daily. These signals are fed through the massive super and quantum computers of the NSA to look for certain keywords called the ECHELON dictionaries. Most of the details of this mammoth spy system and the UQSA agreement that supports it remain a mystery. What is known of ECHELON is the result of the efforts of journalists and researchers around the world who have labored for decades to uncover the operations of our government's most secret systems. The 1996 publication of New Zealand journalist Nikki Hager's book, Secret Power: New Zealand's Role in the International Spy Network, provided the most detailed look at the system and inflamed interest in ECHELON as well as the debate regarding its propriety. This paper examines the expanse of the ECHELON system along with the intelligence agreements and exchanges that support it. The operation of ECHELON serves the NSA's goal of spying on the citizens of other countries while also allowing them to circumvent the prohibition on spying on US citizens. ECHELON is not only a gross violation of our constitution, but it violates the goodwill of our European allies and threatens the privacy of innocent civilians around the world. The existence and expansion of ECHELON is a foreboding omen regarding the future of our constitutional liberties. If a government agency can willingly violate the most basic components of the Bill of Rights without so much as congressional oversight and approval, we have reverted from a republican form of government to tyranny. Here are the parties. The success of the Allied military effort in World War II was due in no small part to successes in gathering enemy intelligence information and cracking those military and diplomatic messages. In addition, the Allied forces were able to create codes and encryption devices that effectively concealed sensitive information from prying Axis power eyes. These coordinated signal intelligence (SIGINT) programs kept Allied information secure and left the enemies vulnerable. But at the close of the conflict, a new threatening power, the Soviet Union, was beginning to provoke the Cold War by enslaving Eastern Europe. These signal intelligence agencies now had a new enemy toward which to turn their electronic eyes and ears to ensure that the balance of power could be maintained. The volleys of electronic hardware and espionage that would follow for 40 years would be the breeding ground of the ECHELON spy system. The diplomatic foundation that was the genesis of ECHELON is the UQSA agreement. The agreement has its roots in the Bruce Accommodant, Communications Intelligence, alliance formed in the early days of World War II and ratified on May 17, 1943 by the United Kingdom and the United States. The Commonwealth SIGINT organization formed in 1946-47 brought together the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand post-war intelligence agencies. Forged in 1947 between the US and UK, the still-secret UQSA agreement defined the relations between the SIGINT departments of those various governments. Direct agreements between the US and these agencies also define the intricate relationship that these organizations engage in. Foremost among those agencies is the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, which represents the American interest. The NSA is designated as the first party to the treaty. The Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, signed the UQSA agreement on behalf of the UK and its Commonwealth SIGINT partners. This brought Australia's Defence Signals Directorate, DSD, the Canadian Communications Security Establishment, CSE, and New Zealand's Government Communications Security Bureau, GCSB, into the arrangement. While these agencies are bound by additional direct agreements with the US and each other, these four countries are considered the second parties to their UQSA treaty. Third-party members include Germany, Japan, Norway, South Korea, and Turkey. There are sources that indicate China may be included in this group on a limited basis as well. In a previous broadcast, we the anonymous charity explained in detail the significance of the J-Trig program run by UK's GCHQ. The Five Eyes Syndicate has a far more reaching arm than that. National Security Agency, US. The prime mover in the UQSA arrangement is undeniably the National Security Agency, NSA. The majority of funds for joint projects and facilities as well as the direction for intelligence gathering operations are issued primarily through the NSA. The participating agencies frequently exchange personnel, divide up intelligence collection tasks and establish common guidelines for classifying and protecting shared information. However, the NSA utilizes its role as the largest spy agency in the world to have its international intelligence partners do its bidding. President Harry Truman established the NSA in 1952 with a presidential directive that remains classified to this day. The U.S. government did not acknowledge the existence of the NSA until 1957. Its original mission was to conduct the signal intelligence, SIGINT, and communications security, ComSec, for the U.S. President Ronald Reagan added the tasks of information systems security and operations security training in 1984 and 1988 respectively. A 1986 law charged the NSA with supporting combat operations for the Department of Defense. Headquartered at Fort George Meade, located between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland, the NSA boasts the most enviable array of intelligence equipment and personnel in the world. The NSA is the largest global employer of mathematicians, featuring the best teams of code makers and code breakers ever assembled. The latter's job is to crack the encryption codes of foreign and domestic electronic communications, forwarding the revealed messages to their enormous team of skilled linguists to review and analyze the messages in over 100 languages. The NSA is also responsible for creating the encryption codes that protect the U.S. government's communications. In its role as gang leader for UQSA, the NSA is primarily involved with creating new surveillance and code-breaking technology, directing the other cooperating agencies to their targets, and providing them with training and tools to intercept, process and analyze enormous amounts of signals intelligence. By possessing what is arguably the most technologically advanced communications, computer and code-breaking equipment of any government agency in the world, the NSA serves as a competent and capable taskmaster for UQSA. The ECHELON network. The vast network created by the UQSA community stretches across the globe and into the reaches of space. Land-based intercept stations, intelligence ships sailing the seven seas and top-secret satellites whirling 20,000 miles overhead all combine to empower the NSA and its UQSA allies with access to the entire global communications network. Very few signals escape its electronic grasp. Having divided the world up among the UQSA parties, each agency directs its electronic vacuum cleaner equipment towards the heavens and the ground to search for the most minute communications signals that traverse the system's immense path. The NSA facilities in the US cover the communications signals of both American continents. The GCHQ in Britain is responsible for Europe, Africa and Russia west of the Ural Mountains. The DSD in Australia assists in SIGINT collection in Southeastern Asia and the Southwest Pacific and Eastern Indian Ocean areas, and the GSCB in New Zealand is responsible for Southern Pacific Ocean collections, particularly the South Pacific Island Nations Group. The CSE in Canada handles interception of additional Northern Russian, Northern European and American communications. The facilities. The backbone of the ECHELON network is the massive listening and reception stations directed at the Intelsat and Inmarsat satellites that are responsible for the vast majority of phone and fax communications traffic within and between countries and continents. The 20 Intelsat satellites follow a geostationary orbit locked onto a particular point on the equator. These satellites carry primarily civilian traffic, but they do additionally carry diplomatic and governmental communications that are of particular interest to the UQSA parties. Originally, only two stations were responsible for Intelsat intercepts, Morwenstow in England and Yakima in the state of Washington. However, when the Intelsat 5 series was replaced with the Intelsat 701 and 703 satellites, which had much more precise transmission beams that prohibited reception of southern hemisphere signals from the Yakima base in the northern hemisphere. Additional facilities were constructed in Australia and New Zealand. Today, the Morwenstow station directs its ears towards the Intelsats traversing the atmosphere above the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and transmitting to Europe, Africa and western parts of Asia. The Yakima station, located on the grounds of the Yakima Firing Station, targets Pacific Ocean communications in the Northern Hemisphere as well as the Far East. Another NSA facility at Sugar Grove, West Virginia, covers traffic for the whole of North and South America. A DST station at Geraldton, Australia, and the Waihapai, New Zealand GCSB facility cover Asia, the South Pacific countries and the Pacific Ocean. An additional station on Ascension Island in the Atlantic Ocean between Brazil and Angola is suspected of covering the Atlantic Intelsat Southern Hemisphere communications. Non-Intelsat satellites are monitored from these same stations, as well as from bases in Menwith Hill, England, Shoal Bay, Australia, Leitrim, Canada, Bad Aibling, Germany, and Misawa, Japan. These satellites typically carry Russian and regional communications. It is known that the Shoal Bay facility targets a series of Indonesian satellites and that the Leitrim station intercepts communications from Latin American satellites, including the Mexican telephone company's Morelos satellite. Several dozen other radio listening posts operated by the UQSO allies dot the globe as well, located at military bases on foreign soil and remote spy posts. These stations played a critical role in the time prior to the development of satellite communications because much of the world's communications traffic was transmitted on radio frequency bands. Particularly in the high-frequency, HF, range, radio communications continue to serve an important purpose despite the widespread use of satellite technology because their signals can be transmitted to military ships and aircraft across the globe. Shorter range very high frequencies, VHF, and ultra-high frequencies, UHF, are also used for tactical military communications within national borders. Major radio facilities in the UQSA network include Tangimoana, New Zealand, Bamago, Australia, the joint NSA-GCHQ facility at the Indian Ocean atoll of Diego Garcia. There is so much more to share with you, but we will try and keep this transmission short. In tomorrow's broadcast, we will delve into and dissect each location of the Five Eyes, as well as look at problems this has caused. We will look at operations that have stemmed from these locations and will also look at how this impacts us today in 2019. Please be sure to double-check that you are indeed still subscribed to both our channels, as many have mentioned they had been unsubscribed unknowingly. This has been a message from the anonymous charity known as The Collective. Today's date is January 20th, 2019. End of transmission.